The rain had just started when Rylan Stokes stepped onto the synthetic turf of the InterSpecies Academy's main athletic field. The drizzle fell in thin sheets, glinting under the floodlights that surrounded the oval like silent sentinels. His cleats crunched softly as he jogged toward midfield, nodding at a few teammates, humans and aliens alike, already stretching. He wasn't supposed to be playing tonight. A tight hamstring from last week's match against the Terrellian cluster team had earned him a firm recommendation from the Academy's medbot to sit out. But Rylan had a stubborn streak, and with half the squad nursing injuries or navigating species-specific hibernation cycles, Coach Langley had given him the green light after he insisted he was fine. "Just don't do anything stupid," the coach had said, not really believing Rylan would listen. At the sidelines, two Xantharian students, Thrak and Lom, watched from the bleachers, both wrapped in shimmering blue cloaks to protect their gill films from the earth rain. They've been observing human behavior for nearly 3 months now as part of the Academy's interplanetary cultural immersion program. So far, they'd seen humans cry over losing a chess match, laugh hysterically at something called stand-up comedy, and consume beverages so hot they would burn through a Xantharian's outer membrane. But nothing prepared them for what they were about to witness. The match started without ceremony. The visiting team, composed mostly of Odrin students, lanky, six-eyed, and preternaturally fast, took an early lead. Rylan, playing midfield, darted between opposing players, distributing passes, calling plays. His body felt good. Solid. Maybe he'd been overcautious. Then it happened. There was no dramatic collision. No slow-motion fall. Just a misstep. Rylan pivoted to intercept a pass, his left foot planted while his right slid slightly on the damp turf. A sharp pop echoed from his knee, followed by a white-hot bolt of pain that shot up his leg and crumpled him to the ground. He didn't scream, but the way he curled inward, clutching his leg, said more than any cry could. "Stop. Stop the match," someone yelled. Coach Langley and two teammates rushed to him. One of them, a Martian hybrid named Eli, knelt beside him. "Don't move, Rylan." "What happened?" "Knee," Rylan gasped, jaw tight. "Something snapped. Can't straighten it." Thrak and Lom stood up in alarm, their wide eyes reflecting the field lights. "Is it deadly?" Thrak asked, his voice watery with concern. "No," Lom said, "but he's clearly incapacitated. That joint is compromised." A medical team arrived with a hover stretcher. Rylan resisted at first, trying to sit up, but the pain flared again and he collapsed back. They transported him to the med center adjacent to the field, a sleek glass structure humming with diagnostic equipment. Rylan lay on the gurney, sweat mixing with rain on his forehead, while a med bot scanned his leg. "Ligament rupture confirmed," the unit announced. "Torn anterior cruciate ligament. Human classification, ACL. Severity, complete tear." Coach Langley rubbed his temples. "That's bad. Real bad." "How long?" Rylan asked. "Recovery estimated at 9 to 12 Earth months, with surgical intervention and physical therapy." Rylan let that sink in. Nearly a year off the field. He closed his eyes briefly, then nodded. "Can I get up?" "You should not bear weight." "I'm not." "Just sit me up." Thrak and Lom, who had followed into the med center, watched intently from behind a transparent barrier. The door hissed open. A nurse entered carrying a pair of crutches. "You'll need these until we get you into surgery," she said, adjusting the height. "Take it slow." Rylan sat up, then swung his legs over the side of the bed, wincing. He grasped the crutches and took a moment to steady himself. "You're not walking out of here, are you?" Coach Langley asked, incredulous. "I'm not crawling," Rylan said. He stood, leaning heavily on the crutches, his face pale but composed. Then he looked at the nurse, nodded once, and said, "I'm all right." From behind the glass, Thrak's fingers twitched in disbelief. "Did he say he is all right?" Thrak murmured. "He did," Lom replied. "Despite a torn ligament and confirmed debilitating injury. That makes no biological sense." "None whatsoever." Rylan hobbled out of the med center, heading toward the dorms with short, careful steps. The evening air was crisp, the rain lighter now. Every movement sent twinges through his leg, but he didn't complain. He just moved. The next morning, Thrak and Lom appeared in the human common area, both carrying data pads. Rylan was seated on a couch, leg elevated and wrapped, eyes scanning the screen of a rented tablet. He noticed them and gave a small wave. "You have sustained a severe connective tissue rupture," Lom said, standing over him. "Yeah," Rylan replied. "I know. But you said, and I quote, 'I'm all right.'" Rylan adjusted the ice pack on his knee. It's a thing we say. Doesn't mean I'm physically fine. Just, I'll deal with it. But you stood. You ambulated. With supports, but still. I had to get to my room. Not like someone was going to carry me. Why didn't someone carry you? Thrak asked. That's not really how we do things. The two aliens exchanged a look, then sat down across from him. What are your plans now? Lam asked. Surgery in a week, Rylan said. Then rehab. Probably 6 months before I can jog. And you will continue? Yeah, I've come this far. Not stopping now. Thrak tilted his head. Human resilience is not a theoretical construct, then. It's demonstrable. Even when functionality is degraded, you persist. It's not just about the body, Rylan said. It's the mindset. You get knocked down, you figure out how to get back up. Even if it takes a while. Lam made a note on his pad. We must observe this recovery closely. And they did. Over the next few weeks, the two aliens remained frequent visitors. They watched as Rylan underwent surgery, asking permission to view the procedure through the observation dome above the ore. They watched as he winced through his first physical therapy session, biting his lip hard enough to draw blood as he tried to flex his knee 15 degrees. They watched him fall twice trying to balance on one leg and still get up for another attempt. They watched him not give up. 3 months in, Rylan was walking without crutches, albeit with a slight limp. The therapist had upgraded him to resistance bands and sluggish treadmill sessions. He was still far from the field, but the progress was undeniable. At the 6-month mark, Rylan jogged for the first time. Thrak was there, recording vitals from a safe distance, while Lam used a temporal scan to measure strain levels in the healing tissue. Neither of them spoke during the run. But afterward, as Rylan leaned against a railing, panting, a smile breaking across his face, Lam stepped forward. We have submitted a report to our homeworld, he said. Oh yeah? Rylan asked, catching his breath. We titled it, Human Adaptive Willpower in the Face of Musculoskeletal Failure. Catchy. We included a video of you saying, I'm all right, after the tear. Rylan chuckled. That gonna go in a museum somewhere? Perhaps. It's become a subject of debate among our psychology departments. Glad I could help. A week later, Coach Langley approached Rylan with a clipboard. You've been cleared to participate in non-contact drills, he said. Don't push it. You're still months from full scrimmage. Rylan nodded, already tying his laces. On the sidelines, Thrak turned to Lam. Do you think we could simulate that mindset? Lam shook his head. I don't think it can be replicated. Not entirely. It's not just logic. It's something deeper. They watched as Rylan stepped onto the field again, moving slower than before, but with more intention. Every step measured, every pivot guarded. He was not the fastest anymore. Not yet. But he was there. And that, for the moment, was enough. It was 4 days after Rylan's first non-contact drill, and the gymnasium's rehab wing thrummed with quiet, methodical activity. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic and rubber mats, interrupted occasionally by the whir of resistance machines and the clatter of dropped weights. Rylan stood at a balance board station, sweat already gathering at the collar of his shirt. He shifted his weight carefully, forcing the board to wobble in controlled arcs under his left foot. Across the room, 3 Xantharian observers huddled around a floating holographic display. Thrak and Lam were joined by a younger Xantharian named Vesk, who had recently rotated in from their planetary embassy. Vesk's dorsal fronds twitched with unfiltered curiosity as he watched Rylan's leg muscles engage and release under strain. He's favoring the lateral side, Vesk noted. The inner stabilizers aren't fully reactivated yet. He's aware, Lam said. He adjusts every 10 seconds or so. Why not use an exobrace? Vesk asked. There's clearly compensatory misalignment. He refused, said Thrak. Said he needs to teach the knee to remember. Vesk blinked twice. That is not how knees work. Apparently, for humans, it is. Rylan looked up from the board, breath shallow. You all taking bets over there, or just critiquing my form? Vesk stepped forward. We are attempting to understand your decisions. Your method appears inefficient. That's rehab, Rylan said. It's not supposed to feel efficient. It's supposed to feel like progress. He stepped off the board and grabbed a resistance band from the wall rack. Looping it around his ankle and the fixed bar near the floor, he began slow abduction reps, pulling his leg laterally against the band's tension. What's the purpose of that motion? Vesk asked. Strengthens the hip. Knee can't heal right if the chain above and below it's weak. You are restoring strength to an area not directly involved in the injury? Everything's connected, Rylan said through gritted teeth. You don't just fix one bolt and hope the ship flies. Frack tilted his head. That metaphor is inconsistent with your earlier statement about teaching the knee to remember. Welcome to physical therapy, Rylan muttered. Lom's tendrils twitched in what passed for Xantharian amusement. At the far end of the room, the physiotherapist, a grizzled Earth woman named Jada who'd seen 2 decades of sports injuries, waved at Rylan. Still standing? Good. Let's see what your hamstring thinks about bridges today. Rylan groaned under his breath, unlooped the band, and limped over to the mat area. The aliens followed, careful to avoid the towel piles and foam rollers scattered like obstacles. Jada pointed at a padded bench. Feet up, shoulders down. We're adding a hold at the top this time. Rylan lay down, planted his heels, and lifted his hips off the bench. His abdominal muscles tensed as he held the bridge, the trembling in his left leg growing more visible with each passing second. You're shaking, Vesk observed. Thanks for the update, Rylan said through clenched teeth. Jada didn't look up from her clipboard. Hold it for 10. Breathe. Rylan exhaled slowly through his nose, counting in his head. By the 8th second, his leg quivered violently. On 10, he dropped his hips and rolled to the side. Jada gave him a nod. Better control than last week. My spine disagrees, Rylan said, wiping his forehead with his sleeve. You're not here to make your spine happy. Frack leaned in. How do you measure success? The movement was unstable. Jada looked up. He didn't collapse. That's success today. Vesk looked at the others. These thresholds are absurdly low. They're contextual, Jada said, already setting up the next drill. He's not training to outperform anyone. He's training to return to himself. That quieted them. For a moment, even Vesk said nothing. Later, Rylan sat on a treatment table with an ice pack strapped to his knee. His shirt clung to his back, soaked through. He stared at the ceiling while Jada massaged his quadriceps with a compression wand. This is the part where I pretend this doesn't hurt, Rylan said. You're doing a poor job. I'm out of good lies. Thrak stepped forward. You accepted this pain intentionally. What? If I don't push now, I won't be ready when it counts. Lom gestured to the ice pack. But the damage is repaired. The tear was sutured. The rest is voluntary discomfort. Exactly. Vesk paced slowly around the table, inspecting the readouts on the wall. You undergo daily suffering for a future that's not guaranteed. If you're injured, the outcome may be worse. That's the risk. Why not switch to another activity? Because I love this one. Vesk stopped. You love something that injured you. It didn't injure me. I made a bad move. The sport was just the context. Frack looked between them. Have you considered neural conditioning instead? You could simulate the experience without physical strain. Rylan sat up slowly. Simulations don't smell like grass. They don't have wind. They don't make your heart race because someone real is chasing you. They're just shadows. Shadows don't break joints, Vesk said. Neither do regrets, Rylan replied. But they last longer. The aliens didn't respond. They had no equivalent term for regret in their language. The closest was temporal dissonance, but it lacked the sting. 2 hours later, the rehab wing had emptied out. Rylan remained behind, seated on a bench near the exit. He was strapping a cold wrap around his thigh when Lom approached, holding a data sphere. We've submitted a supplemental report, Lom said. This time, it focuses on your recovery strategies rather than the initial injury. That's flattering, Rylan replied, adjusting the wrap. We included subjective observations, emotional states, mental endurance. That's a weird thing to quantify. It is not quantifiable. We included it anyway. Your supervisor's okay with that? They were unsettled but accepted our rationale. Rylan leaned back against the wall. Why do you care so much about how humans bounce back? Lom paused. Because we don't. Not like this. We have protocols, regeneration chambers, DNA mapping. But we do not have your persistence. When something breaks in us, we replace it. You repair. That doesn't always work out. And yet you try. They sat in silence, the drone of the air conditioner humming overhead. Eventually, Rylan stood, favoring his legs slightly less than before. See you tomorrow? We will return, Lom said. We have more to learn. As Rylan limped toward the exit, he called over his shoulder. Bring snacks next time. I'm burning calories like a malfunctioning warp coil. The door hissed shut behind him, Vesk turned to the others. I examined his medical records. He had a similar injury 5 Earth years ago. Opposite leg. Frack's brow plates lifted. He did not mention that. He recovered, returned to play, then did it again. Lom considered this. He knew the risk all along. Yes, and still chose it. Vesk folded his arms. That is not logic. That is devotion. Frack looked at the empty bench. It is something we do not yet have a word for. They stood in silence, surrounded by machines designed to rebuild what nature had once assembled, effortlessly watching, recording, and quietly wondering what it meant to heal, not because you had to, but because you refused not to. The rehab wing smelled faintly of eucalyptus that morning, a side effect of the new muscle bomb Jada had started using. Rylan sat on the edge of the padded table with his left sock half rolled down, staring at the compression sleeve in his hands. The sleeve was tighter than he remembered. Or maybe his calf had finally started to rebuild. Either way, it took some effort to pull it up. Lom stood nearby, arms folded, while Frack examined the counterweight sled in the corner. Vesk hung back, studying a real-time joint stress display projected above the treadmill. None of them spoke yet. The humans in the room were few today, only Jada and another patient doing shoulder rehab in the far corner. Why are you hesitating? Lom eventually asked, nodding toward the brace. I'm not, said Rylan, tugging the sleeve until it hugged the back of his leg. I'm just pacing myself. You sat still for 6 minutes. I'm pacing myself slowly. Frack turned from the sled. Today's test is loaded lunges. Yes? Yeah, Rylan said. Weighted vest, 20 meters down and back. Last week, you could not complete 10 without support, Frack said. Exactly. So this week, we try 11. Rylan stood and adjusted the Velcro straps on the vest Jada had left beside him. That's the game. Vesk watched him strap it on. Why not attempt 15 immediately? Because I'm not trying to win today. I'm trying to still be walking tomorrow. Jada walked in from the office, carrying a clipboard and a tablet. Vest looks good on you, she said. Try not to fall over in it. That's the whole idea, right? Rylan stepped forward, slightly stiff, but balanced. Start at the green marker, she said. Keep your front knee stable. No wobble. Thrack moved closer to the line of cones laid out along the turf. Is this like a combat drill? No, said Jada. This is like watching paint dry, but the paint is in pain. Rylan stepped to the starting marker, took a breath, and dropped into the first lunge. His right foot stretched forward, left knee hovering just above the mat. He stood, took a slow step, and repeated. Lom observed the way his torso tilted slightly at each descent. Your upper body is compensating. I know, Rylan grunted. Working on it. By the 7th lunge, a tremor ran through his left quad. He paused, took 2 deep breaths, and pushed into the next step. Sweat started to beat along his temples. Weight distribution has improved, Frack noted. But the left side still lacks full drive. You should have seen it last month, said Jada. He looked like a baby giraffe on roller shoes. Rylan chuckled mid-step, then winced. Laughing doesn't help. At the halfway mark, he stood upright and rolled his shoulders. Okay, back stretch. He turned and started the return, each lunge slower now. On the 12th, his knee buckled slightly, and he caught himself with a hand on his thigh. You can stop, Jada said. No need to push through tremors. I'm finishing. He completed the last 8 with gritted teeth and shallow breaths. When he reached the starting cone again, he let the vest fall to the floor and lowered himself onto the bench, chest rising and falling rapidly. Lom looked at Jada. Why do you allow him to continue when he's visibly deteriorating? Because he knows his limit better than I do, she said. And he's not stupid. He stops before it's dangerous. Doesn't look pleasant. It's not supposed to be. Rylan unzipped the vest and leaned back, eyes closed, legs stretched out. You all right? Frack asked. Sure, Rylan said. I'm somewhere between all right and on fire. Vest tilted his head. You assign humor to discomfort. Is that a coping mechanism? No, said Rylan. It's a deeply refined human art form. Jada tossed him a water bottle, which he caught one-handed. You've got 10 minutes before we start the treadmill, she said. Try not to stiffen up in the meantime. He nodded and took a slow sip. Vesk sat on the bench beside him. When you first injured the joint, you used minimal assistance to move. Now, after months of structured recovery, you still appear compromised. Yeah, Rylan said. That's normal. Then what is the point? I'm not aiming to erase the injury. I'm aiming to live past it. Thrak sat down on the floor cross-legged. But your body is not what it was. Nope. But it's getting better. And I'm learning how to use it differently. Lom paced near the turf. Would you accept permanent alteration? Reduced performance? If that's what I end up with, then I make it work. Jada returned and began adjusting the incline on the treadmill. He's not chasing perfection. He's chasing function. Vesk looked over. Function that may never match his prior state. That's recovery, she said. You don't get guarantees. You get effort. Rylan stood and stretched his calves against the bench leg. Also, I'm stubborn. We noticed, said Lom. Minutes later, Rylan stepped onto the treadmill. Jada set it to a low incline and moderate speed. He gripped the sidebars and began walking. His gait was cautious but steady. Any discomfort? She asked. Only existential, he said. Jada smiled. Keep it up. We'll increase incline in 6 minutes. The aliens watched in silence. The readouts on the wall showed muscle activation in real time. The left leg lit up in softer colors than the right, but the difference had narrowed from the last session. Vesk turned to Thrak. I reviewed the footage from his surgery. The repair was mechanical, but everything since has been behavioral. Thrak nodded. The biology can be fixed. The habits must be rebuilt. Lom stepped closer to the treadmill. And yet he jokes. Every time. I think it's armor, said Jada, not looking up from her notes. Some people wear it on the outside. After 15 minutes, Rylan stepped off the treadmill, breath slightly elevated, but his posture held. He didn't limp. Jada handed him a towel. That's it for today. You're ahead of schedule. That's a first. Don't get cocky. You're still not cleared for lateral pivoting. Wouldn't dream of it. Thrak approached him as he sat down again. What will you do if you never reach your prior level of performance? I'll adjust. Maybe I coach. Maybe I analyze. There's always something. You don't mourn what was lost. Rylan looked at him. Of course I do. But mourning doesn't mean stopping. Lom tapped his pad. Our report is complete. We've cataloged your recovery from biological, psychological, and social perspectives. I hope I'm not the worst case study you've seen. You are the most paradoxical. Rylan grinned. I'll take it. Jada folded her clipboard under her arm. You've got a full rest day tomorrow. No cheating. I'll just swim some laps. Rylan. Kidding. I'll nap aggressively instead. She walked off, muttering something about stubborn mammals. Vesk lingered as the others began collecting their things. Do you believe you'll return to the field? He asked. I don't know, Rylan said. But I believe I'll be ready if the chance comes. Vesk absorbed that for a moment. Your species is hard to categorize. Well, Rylan said, pulling on his jacket, we're not designed to make sense. We're designed to keep going. He stood, grabbed his bag, and nodded once toward the trio. Thanks for watching. The aliens followed him out of the rehab wing, past the automatic doors and into the early evening light. The rain had stopped, and the pavement glistened under soft clouds. As Rylan walked ahead, his gait even and unhurried, Lom looked at Thrak. Do you think we'll ever understand their kind fully? I doubt it, Thrak replied. But I'm beginning to appreciate the mystery. They watched as Rylan crossed the courtyard, his steps steady, his path his own.